Okay. Now we only got two more. Wait, that's Brooklyn. You hear the Brooklyn, Levy? We only got. That's Brooklyn dialect. We only got two more sessions right now. I'm a little bit jet lagged, so bear with me. John's coming on. Where are you, John?
Hey, there.
John's our newest member of the community. John's an attorney from New York City, and from where? Queens originally, or the Bronx?
Yeah, originally Queens, born in the Bronx, stayed there for a year, and now I'm back in Queens working on Manhattan.
Wow, beautiful. Great to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And John's going to be officially joining us in August at the conference. So,
right.
Okay, any mechanical question? Next time we meet in 2 weeks is going to be the last time for the summer. So that means we take 1 week off for the summer vacation. Oh, I'm kidding. You take more than that. We're going to take the rest of June, and then July and August when we resume, I believe, in September. Is that right?
We haven't heard.
Yeah, we need somebody that knows about details. Somebody that could do all that stuff. Yeah, I think we take 2 months off. So, okay. We began last time talking about what is this work about archetypal patterning really about? Because the module, we just finished the Neumann module, and I know, Maggie, you want to go back to it. Like, I love that work. I mean, it's difficult, but it really is, I think, one of the most applicable approaches to developmental theory, and it helps you so much. Are there links? Are there gaps in it? No question. Are there holes in some of the theory? Yeah. Okay, and what we're doing now is we're moving into the module on archetypal patterns. And I began last week talking about what does this really look like, and what's the dominant here. Max, can you get on? I know you had trouble last week. I'm pressing a button for you to start the video.
Yeah, I'm on. I'll be on in a second.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
The grande dame of this work is really Marie-Louise von Franz. And I got to get you, let me get the book. It's in the other room. It's one of the best books I've ever read. Let me get it for you. It's a book we're going to have at the conference in August. If you want to get it ahead of time, please get it. It's fantastic. It's just called Marie-Louise. We can't see it. Really, titling. Oh, let me get the different lighting. It's called Marie-Louise von Franz, and it is edited by James Hall and Daryl Sharp. And it's people that write about her work in her life. What it was that she really brought to the table with archetypal patterns. And I can imagine all of you have somebody that you read, and it just, can you see? There you go. Now you can see it better.
Okay.
Yeah, Marie-Louise von Franz.
Show it again.
Yep. And the authors are, you can't see that, James Hall and Daryl Sharp. It sounds like Hall and Oates, the singers. But I would imagine everyone has an author, or one or two authors you have, where you read their work and it just hits you so deeply. The nature of how they write, what they speak about, what their nature's about. And for me, von Franz has always been that. Now let me read you a couple of pieces from the book, okay, to give you the spirit here. This is on page 54. She writes, "Dealing with the living spirit is an excruciating experience," she confided. Read it again, excuse me. "Dealing with the living spirit is an excruciating experience," she confided, clarifying for me that the agonizing process she went through with each interpretation was what produced the light she gave to us. Another piece. She's talking about the visions of Brother Klaus, what Jung wrote about him also. And she says, the saint was preordained spiritual destiny in the bearing of his particular cross whose ultimate meaning aimed at the unification of psychic opposites. Let me get another piece that really captures it. Here we go. And she goes on to say on page 91, you need to have a problem, she says, what Jung called the unredeemed fourth function, and what others would merely call the weak spot, the flaw, the vices. Your inferior function, i.e. the less developed part of your personality, always involves you in new problems and makes the flow of life continue. Well, enough is enough sometimes, okay? Sometimes enough of these problems, okay? It's only in death that problems stop. You know? Either you repeat the same experiences and never find the meaning, and then nothing results, or you don't venture into getting involved and you haven't lived. So you have to live and learn from it. If you change, everything around you changes. Your whole experience of reality changes. Now, this is a controversial piece, he says here. For me, controversial. And I'll read it again. Reality is nothing objective. It is how you experience it. Now, this is interesting because Jung and von Franz kept on going back and forth about objective, subjective. Now, read this piece again. She says, you need to have a problem. What Jung called the unredeemed fourth function, and what others would merely call the weak spot, the flaw, the vices. Your inferior function, the less developed part of your personality, always involves you in new problems and makes the flow of life continue. It's only in death that problems stop. Either you repeat the same experiences and never find the meaning, and then nothing results, or you don't venture into getting involved and you haven't lived. So you have to live and learn from it. If you change, everything around you changes. Your whole experience of reality changes. And then she gives this last strange line. Reality is nothing objective, it's how you experience it. The old Jungians, and let me speak about the old Jungians a little bit, because these are the people whose work I love and I adore. The modern day Jungians, look, I told you, I've said it many times, it's like tomato sauce out of a jar. You know? The old Jungians, they really believed in psyche. They not believe. They knew there was a psyche. They knew there was something organizing life. Von Franz writes in so many ways in this book and throughout her we can call it really her collected works, that psyche moves for us. And it tells its story by virtue of behaviors, of obsessions, of proclivities, of problems, of desires. And for her, everything that happened in life and everything that does happen in life is an expression of something archetypal. And she would work to try to articulate what this archetypal thing is. But the big thing with von Franz, and I read it and I feel, and I'll be transparent, okay? It makes me weep in some ways reading her stuff. Because you realize there is this life that is so powerful and so profound that she dedicated her life to. Barbara Hanna, they lived together. You remember, Barbara Hanna, the old Jungian, they lived together towards the end of their life, and they lived this life. Von Franz, they kid around. They say in all the pictures she had dirty fingernails. Well, because she would always work in the garden, always digging and digging and digging. They said she loved it. She found spirit in the fairy tales. She found spirit in the garden. She found spirit in the earth. And then she tells some stories about some people she worked with. Like she tells a story about James Hall. James Hall, some of you know who he is. He's a very well-known Jungian analyst in Texas. And he was one of the early psychiatrists that went into Jungian analysis. It's an interesting story. Now, one of the things that she describes, or they described in the book here, is he went to her for analysis. And he said to her at one point, I'm very kind of ashamed or very timid to tell you this, but I have this kind of scratch. I want to scratch my head. But I'm afraid if I scratch my head, I'm going to make a hole in my head. I'm going to die. What she said to him was, you're already dead. You're already a dead man. And he said, "Oh my, how could you?" He said to himself, "How can anybody talk to me like this? When she is an old witch, she's trying to destroy me. She hates me. I'm already dead." She said, "You're a dead man. You didn't. No one knew the prophecy of a comment." We'll talk about it a little bit. I would say the original. I don't even know what to call it. The original Jungian work. I don't even know color analysis is. And they make the point, they say it's very different from psychoanalysis. And Von Franz and others were against the idea of calling Jungian psychoanalyst. Now, I call myself a psychoanalyst because I have dual training, really, Freudian and Jungian. Because they said the modern psychoanalyst, so-called the last 50 years, it's a lot about sex and aggression and all that stuff, the transference, and what do you feel about the analyst and all that. Where the classicist, and that's part of this book, it's a classical Jungian and the classic Jungian. Okay, and a modern Jungian. The classic Jungian, they said they didn't care about all that stuff. You know, they didn't look at dreams as about sex. They didn't look at the sex drive. They didn't look at aggression. They didn't look at transference. It wasn't about the interaction between patient and therapist. Now, there's been a lot of development since then. I think the course we've done, John and others have been on it. The Voice of Psyche, the Latin American course, which has been immensely successful. Now, Adriana, by the way, we are starting the institute in Latin America now. It's formal.
Oh,
We're doing it.
wonderful.
Thank you. Very exciting. So the participants from Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, some of the other countries, Peru. And the old Jungians, they were interested in one thing, which is how the dream, how the fantasy, how the obsession, how the perversion, how the whatever is really the voice of psyche knocking on your door. We don't live like that anymore. You know, we really don't. You can't sleep. Well, let's take a pill or you meditate, you levitate, you gravitate. We find a way to sleep. You have that extra glass of tequila, you know, that kind of helps, you know. You have some kind of sexual fantasies because you probably get some kind of perversion. You know, remember Freud's whole thing of sexual perversion. I'm not trying to be off color. He said, look, anything aside from the missionary position is sexual perversion. Well, you know, there you go. You know. The old Jungians, they weren't part of this world. They really weren't. They lived in a different world. They lived in the world like a bunch of old witches and warlocks. They were like little hobbits. You know, you can imagine Von Franz and Barbara Hammer, you know, with no teeth, stirring a pot and saying, "I wonder what's going to come up here. Oh my God, there's a spirit. There's a spirit of the place. There's Achilles. There's whatever. There's Circe and there's Odysseus and oh my God, you know, whatever."
It's true.
And it wasn't a question of was it real or not. And I want to give you a modern day parallel. I hope many of you are coming to the August conference. I know many of you are. One of the faculty, I met her in Bogota at the conference last year. You were there. You gave a presentation in Bogota.
I did.
Yeah. And her name is Patricia. How do you pronounce double L in Spanish? How do you just?
Yosa.
Yota.
Yosa.
Yosa.
Patricia Yota. Say it again.
Yosa.
Yota. And she gave a talk on something called the Ekeko. You know the Ekeko, Adriana?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. I think it's mostly Peruvian tradition.
Peruvian, yes.
I don't want to give too much away because she's giving this talk, and it's a story where I think I may have mentioned last week that everybody has their own ekeko. It's like a statue. Like I have my little wooden statue I had for like 30 years, but it's a bigger and they it's real to them. They feed it. They give it cigars. They give it rum and sometimes too much rum because they like the rum and they get a little bit of drunk, the ekekos, you know, and they get very jealous, you know. But anyway, the point is, it's real. And it's like you watch it and say, what are you, crazy? This is the 20th. What century are we in? 20th or 21st century? I don't even know what that we're in right now. And they believe this. And then during the conference, again, you were there, they had these shamans. I mean, these are the real things, real McCoy. This is not a modern day warrior where you take a shaman weekend and you become a shaman and get your shaman cape and your shaman rattle. These are real. These people lived in the jungles. And they did a song. They did these chants, and it was an incredible conference because you knew we were all being exposed to a different world. Yeah, Elsie, you were there, of course. You were there too at the conference. We were brought into a different world. Not the world where, okay, we got a 50-minute hour, and then well, what's happening? We got to figure the meds, and then we do the legal, and then we do the medical, and then we do the evaluation and the diagnosis, and then, oh, Maron, you know. So I read this stuff, and I weep. I weep because I know it's real. And you weep, you know it's real, and you know sometimes you get too far removed from it. And it kills you. I mean, the details of living, I mean, we all, you know, many of us are similar, come on, to the same age, and a lot of us are in our 60s, and some of you 50s, some of you 40s, and maybe a couple of you 30s or 40s there. Well, you got to get your retirement, you know, you got to get your retirement package. You know, you got to get all that ready, right? You got to have retirement. You got to talk to your financial advisor. You got to get your will ready, you know. And you got to have all that stuff. Your house paid off. Well, you got a mortgage, you refinance your mortgage, you get it paid, you know. How much you making a week? You making enough money to live? You okay? You get things set up for your kids. You got trust fund, you know, all that stuff, which is part of it. Now, you look, the Puer archetype. The Puer archetype is the one that says, remember what he says in the book, The Little Prince? And it's not, did you have a Little Prince in Russian? Yeah. And the Little Prince says to Anton Saint-Exupéry, my French was brutal, they say, do you know, we know all about adults. Adults are all about neckties and golf scores. It's a great line. That's all they care about is a necktie, wearing a tie, and playing golf, and what kind of score they get. And it's really about, it's a mockery against adulthood, because on one hand, the adults are all about the, you know, the retirements and the salary and the homes and the mortgage and all that kind of stuff, and or really you're putting money away for your beautiful little baby right now, and they'll see you got money for your kids, and you got all that, grandparents and all that stuff. No, that's so real. It's a challenge. And remember, the hero, as we talked about in the last Neumann module, next to last Neumann module, the hero, as Neumann talks about, is a forerunner of humanity. Because they say, prior to the hero, the individual was embedded in the world where the world oriented what happened. The world did it. Like you're in the water and you're bobbing like a cork. And the water takes you here and it takes you there. It takes you here, it takes you there. Because you got no power. Then the second part of life is you begin to get the rudder, you get a motor, you get a boat, and you begin to say, I'm going over there, I'm going over here, I'm going here. So you begin to shape what happens. The third state, which Neumann calls centroversion, is when you allow the self to orient your life. That's what these guys did. Now, there are a lot of modern day centroversion people. And it's a lot of I think the shadow side of the new age, where it all looks great, it's all very pretty, it's all very beautiful, let the self do it. But you can feel, you like when you watch a musician, you watch an artist's work, you watch anybody who's good at what they do, and you ask a question, is it authentic or not? Are they coming from the self or not with this work? You know? These people, they had no doubt. They had no doubt that this stuff was real. Maybe they were the nuts. Maybe they were the nutty ones, okay? I mean, would they fit in the world today? You kidding me? They would be bounced out of Analytic Institute so damn quick. Well, maybe we work for 2 hours. Maybe we work for 1 hour. Maybe we lower the fee. Maybe raise the fee. You know, all these things, the boundaries didn't matter. Now, clearly, look, I'm not a hypocrite. I talk boundaries. We do a whole class. Right? We're just finishing the whole class. 27, maybe 30 weeks by the time we finish. 30 weeks on looking at the manifestation of psyche within fields. And part of that is about boundaries, boundary condition, because everything is bounded. Every cell, everything that lives has a certain boundary condition to it. Here's the challenge, okay? As we move into the module of archetypal patterns, here's the challenge. How do you live in a world of modernity with cell phones? And could you imagine one front on a cell phone? Von Franz, the cellular Von Franz, the cellular elder, that's what we call it. You know, with cell phones and computers and Zooms and all this kind of stuff, which is part of life and part of what we need to respect, and it's part of the, you know, the way we live today. I mean, we couldn't be doing this. You know, look, you guys are Australia, Russia, Colombia, all over the world, you know. We couldn't do it if it wasn't for the technology. So it's not that we're trying to create this schism between the good and bad, but how do you live in both worlds? How do you live in a world where whatever is coming up for a client, the perseveration around something, the obsessive compulsive disorders, you realize ultimately it's a spiritual issue. That whatever it is that you are obsessive about, it may have a spiritual function. Whether it's sexual, whether financial, whether whatever domain of life it's involved in, psyche is trying to tell its story. Now, that's a model. It's a model that they understood. I'm talking about them as the elders, okay? They understood, they believed, they knew, it wasn't a question of even belief, that life is shaped by transcendent and transpersonal forces. And their work was an attempt to understand the forces. The image of the tree, the image of the baby, the image of the father, the image of the mother. And what von Franz did as a scholar, and they throughout the book, people, they all talked about her incredible scholarship. She would look at an image from 10 different cultures. The beautiful cat you got there, you know. What about the cat in the Persian culture? What about the cat in the Russian culture? What about the cat and on and on? And when she studied, they say over 60,000 fairy tales. What you begin to find is that the fairy tales are capturing the archetypal canons of humanity. That the fairy tales are capturing the canons of life that we've lived with since the beginning of time. Each fairy tale is giving you a snippet of life. You know, we talked in one of the classes about the fisherman's wife, right? Remember that story where they catch the fish that's underwater, the talking fish? Well, that's a great story. I mean, it's a story of possession and a story of the feminine and how the masculine responded to the feminine. And remember, it's Barbara Hanna that made one of the most brilliant comments. She said, look, you can interpret any fairy tale, any biblical story as being about, well, people ask, people say it this way, people say, is that about the masculine or about the feminine? She would say, yeah. Okay, well, which is it? She said, you can read it either way. It's a story of the masculine, the fisherman and his wife. It's a story of how the man responds to certain things, what he does with life. And it's a story of the feminine, what she does with it, and how they interact. So you can see it from both perspectives. But the point in all the fairy tales and all the biblical stories is it's giving you a slice of life to tell you about a particular issue. Each fairy tale is telling you about a particular slice of the human experience. And where mythology comes in, those who come to Italy, we have another special guest speaker. Her name is Dr. Rosalie Rothman. She's a very well-known mythologist. She's probably in her 80s today. She was with Campbell and others. And she's going to give a brief presentation, like it's a 20-minute presentation, one of the panels. And she gave a talk for us years ago, and she said, mythology is a record of humanity's experiences with the deities. It's a great line. So what happens when Hephaestus comes into our life? What happens when Circe comes into our life? What does it mean? So when we begin now taking the next piece of this, when you look at any story, you read a story, you watch a movie, and you're having a scene, and all the stagings of that scene, where are you? You know, I was just in Texas this weekend. I'm kind of tired right now. And I showed some of the movie Moonstruck. Some of you have seen it because I presented it here too. It's a great, I think it's a brilliant film. And remember the scene when Ronnie's in the bakery. You know, Cher comes in the bakery to announce a wedding to the brother. And there's Ronnie, and he says, well, all I do all day is I shove this damn bread into this hole in the wall, this fire in the wall, in this oven. and bread, and I cooked the bread, I baked the bread in this oven, in the oven all day long. That's all I do. That's an archetypal story. You see, you're being asked to have at least a double, if not a triple vision. It's a triptych. Personal, archetypal, transcendent. So when he's talking the bread, what's he dealing with? What archetype he dealing with? He works the bread. He works with the dough all day. So the Freudians say dough, clearly it's about money. Put the bread in a hole in the wall. It must be sexual. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be crude. I'm giving you how the Freudians would work with this stuff. No, it's you know, it may be a piece of relevance to it, but it's also very simplistic. When you talk about bread and dough, what archetype? What are we dealing with? Who is it?
Demeter.
Yeah. Say it again.
Demeter.
Yeah, it's Demeter. When you got the hole in the wall, the oven that within which you cook this stuff, what's the hearth? What's the archetype of the hearth?
The womb.
Vesta.
What's a goddess?
Vesta.
Hey, Hestia. Hestia is a goddess of the hearth. One of my favorite images. I mean, I love fire. I love wood stoves, and I have a fireplace. I have my wood oven here. I cook my pizza in it, 900 degrees. It's just incredible. So the point is, you begin to see that the world is animated because of the archetypal backdrop to it. When we are inflamed with something, on whatever level, whether it's inflamed by a relationship, inflamed by anger, inflamed by that love of that baby you feel, you feel like you're gonna burst, you know, because it's coming out of you, the love and whatever. What you're inflamed by is not only your emotions, you're inflamed by something transcendent. When you look at that baby, yes, it's part of your own body. Yeah, of course, part of the man's body, but more so the woman's body, okay? But what is it you're also inflamed by? And this is and this is part of the lecture I'm going to begin. Anastasia is going to be translating when I go to Russia in July. Almost everything we're involved in life, from relationships to the love for the baby, watching your little boy sing his songs, they'll say, you know, all of them dance and all that kind of great stuff. Looking at my father at 103, talking about things. You know, us getting ready to go to Italy, getting ready to have your summer vacation, you know, closing down your office for a while, you know, thinking about going to the beach with your baby and all that kind of stuff. Moving, okay, Deborah, going from East Coast to West Coast, you know, wherever you are, in Texas somewhere, okay? Moving later in life, Georgiana, you know, you're not 40 anymore, 50 anymore. You're moving when you're older. It's all archetypal. And a big part of the work for us as we begin to try to fine-tune our skills. First, not fine-tune, do the rough carpentry first and then fine-tune it, okay? Saying, okay, what is it when their mother and father are so inflamed by the love for that infant? When you watch that little boy give his show, right? They'll sing and dance on the stage, the microphone, and sing. Besame mucho, ta 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 ta. You know, whatever. Why so inflamed? Is it just because it's your baby? Not just. I mean, is it only because it's your child? Of course, it's a big part of it. Now, I'm not trying to promote a schizoidal response where, oh, it's really not my child, it's just some other emotion. Of course it's your child. Of course it's your wife. Of course it's your husband. Of course it's somebody you adore. The grandmother you love with all your heart. The mama or papa you love with all your heart or whatever. It's all there. But there's something behind it. So when you see somebody inflamed with the passion for their child, what's the issue? Georgiana or anybody, Marie, what's the issue? As you begin, if you look at it like a fairy tale, the mother is inflamed with the love for her infant, for her baby. As you begin thinking about that as an archetypal pattern analyst, you begin approaching it, what are you thinking about? What is she inflamed by?
Well, in the field of the mother, the field of caregiver.
See, your voice is all getting cracky.
The field of the mother, the field of the caregiver, the field of love, which is caring.
So part of it, even more. Adrian, what would you say? What is that mother inflamed by, aside from the actual baby and the child?
It's seeing this cycle of life. It's like, it's beyond the experience of one person.
Exactly. That's the other part, Marie. It's in addition to the mother and the maternal and all that, it's also being inflamed by seeing new life in front of you.
But you see new life all of the time, so the mother and their own child seems different than just the cycle of life.
Exactly.
So would you expand on that? It's more than the cycle of life.
See, we're taking everything, you take it all, it's a story, it's a movie, it's a passion play. Shakespeare.
Passion.
And ask, what is it that's brought you to your knees? And yeah, it's a cycle of life, it's maternal. It's also what you've given birth to. It's also the new order that's coming up, the new order, this whole new life that's got a whole life, hope to God, a good life ahead of it, that you're responsible for a lot of it, you know. So as you begin to look at the image, you're saying, here is that which I've given birth to, and I will be taking care of the rest of my life. Here's a new life, a new order. You see how already it begins taking it in a bigger level? You had your hand up, Aurelia? You want to say something?
Yeah, I just I think from my own experience, there's something about looking at my own child, and that brought that archetype to an experiential level. I looked at my mentor one day, and you know, all the decisions I made, you know, the decision to marry my partner led to this life that's in front of me. And it sounds really simple to say that, but I was overwhelmed with, you know, the everything of that, the experience of what that meant. And I think it's, you know, I think, Michael, what you were just saying now just got at it beautifully. And it's also an experience of legacy, that this, you know, this life, whatever it is that one has given birth to, you know, whether it's a child or, you know, a life's work that is equally huge, it's what lives on after us and continues.
Exactly.
Could you compare it then, the child to the divine?
Yeah. It's a divine birth, a divine life.
It's the spark of life itself, that is, I think, beyond humanity.
I'll share a piece in terms of child. I don't know, I may have shared this with some of you before. When my son was born, I remember he was tiny. He was premature. He was about not even 5 pounds. He's about 4 pounds, something with feet that big, you know. And we took him home, and you put what do you call the thing next to your bed? A bassinet? I always forget the word. A crew.
Yes.
They sleep in the bassinet. Bassinet, right? They sleep in the bassinet, and you know, mom and dad. Oh my God, the baby! Oh my God, what a feeling, right? And I watched his little heart and his chest. You know, the heart rate must be like 8,000 beats a minute, right? I freaked out. I said, "Oh my God, my kid's gonna die. My kid's gonna die." You know, you may remember the story. Some of you may remember it. I called a friend of mine. Actually, Manisha Roy was coming to speak in August. She's a wonderful woman from India. I said, Manisha, I think I'm a sick human being. She said, why are you a sick human being? She said, well, we know that, Mike. Anyway, but why right now? What's making you realize you're a sick human being? I said, because I think I got a death wish for my kid. She said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm looking at my baby. I'm loving this kid with all my heart. And then I watched his little heart beating so fast. And I think he's going to die, because the heart's going to burst out of his body. She said, Michael, now you know what love is. So, well, you better tell me more. I don't get it. She said, when you love that deeply, then you deal with loss. Because if you love, you could lose. If you don't love, you don't lose. Like she says here, right? That piece I read, the opening piece I read by Van Franz, if you don't really live this, you haven't lived your life. And anyway, so you have that emotion. Okay, you got it, Mike. If you love that much, you could lose. Be open to it. Be vulnerable. Now, as a pattern analyst, Adrian, come back to that. As a pattern analyst, what would you say that experience is? We got the piece. You love that deeply, you could lose. You got it. the next level. Now, let me, before you respond, I am in no way advocating a distant response to the human emotion. Is that clear what I'm saying? How I mean that? I'm not saying, oh, really? Okay, it's not about your baby, okay? Also, it's not your wonderful love watching your little boy there perform on the stage. It's not about that, okay? Max being proud, seeing your kid go to college, getting degrees, and finishing college, so you don't have to pay college bills anymore. You know, we all know that one. But anyway, so when I tell you the story, Adrian, about my baby, you know, watching the heart go nuts, we got the emotion, we got the human piece, we got you love that deeply, which is profound. It's a profound piece she gave me. It's something I'll never forget until the day I die. You know, as a pattern analyst, what are you also hearing?
I actually just had this experience today with my father who had surgery. And I was thinking about the possibility of losing my father today.
Oh.
And it, you know, it brought tears to my eyes. I mean, he's okay. But there's something, it's almost as if there's an eternal connection. It's something, you know, I was thinking about all of so many memories and how did this man, you know, how we came together. My mother was with me, how we came together, and how the significance of it, it's personal, but it's like a soul connection. It's something deeper and broader. And it's hard for me to explain it.
Well, it is hard, and that's our work. Our work, that's what makes us a challenge. I mean, these are profound, deeply spiritual experiences, and our work as a pattern analyst is seek to translate. All of you doing your papers, you know, Deborah doing your piece on Parsifal and his mother, the Crusades, Jennifer, you know, Susanna on Homecoming, Sue Burrell, the incredible piece you're doing on you know, mother infant fatalities and the birth part. I mean, these are all huge pieces. And Anastasia doing a piece on teachers and the archetype of burnout. I mean, these are all profound pieces of work. Evie, you did the whole thing on death, you know. That was a real upbeat presentation. Look, we had a lot of tequila sitting in the tables as you're presenting there, okay? But anyway, you know, you translate. So it may help, Adrian, to help you have a bit of, I don't call it even objectivity, but another lens. It's okay, if this was a dream, what you felt about your father, we're not going personal, we're not talking personal, but with your father, or the story I'm giving right now with my son. Now it's personal, but I think I have enough distance here in some way. What if you heard that as a dream? Nancy saying, well, young ones wrote life as a luminous pause between, oh my God, it's beautiful. Nancy, put that back up there, it's gorgeous. Young ones wrote life as a luminous pause between two great mysteries which are themselves one. Thank you, beautiful, beautiful. So if you look at this as an archetypal pattern, what is it you would say? What's happened to the guy Michael as you look at the heartbeat going so fast, 800 beats a minute, a second, 800 beats a minute. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. If it was a dream, what's that dream about? Oh my God, my kid's gonna die. The heart's gonna go too fast.
Well, there's two things that come to mind. I keep thinking about this sort of life, death, regeneration. I mean, that life and death go together, and it's a continual, perpetual process.
Yeah.
And then I'm also thinking about these sort of soul connections, these very deep connections that we have, you know, with other people, or and how that continues. It's like a continual. It's like it's repeating. It's patterns. I mean, it's this perpetual cycles of life, death, rebirthing the new.
It's all part of it. You gotta find it. It's all part of it. You begin. And this is something I practice every day.
Okay.
To get a handle on it. To get a handle on the actual ontological features of a story. Jennifer, what would you say if that was a dream with the baby, the heartbeat, fear of death, whatever, and we know it's a baby, that's all part of the story. What would you say the archetypal pattern is? What would the translation be? See, Adrian, it's a question. What would we translate to the dreamer, to the individual who's telling you with such they're impassioned by it, inflamed by it, the experience, terrified by it? You're muted, Jennifer. You're muted. Hold, you're muted. Wait, hold on, I'm gonna lose it. Okay. Holly, you're still muted.
Okay.
Okay.
I've kind of lost my page to see you guys, so I don't know where I am. But what I see in what I would say is have a father looking at their child in that manner. I think the whole thing of death, because suddenly the fear of losing that child could also be the loss of losing, facing his own death as a mortal, because you're supposed to die before your child, losing your progeny, your legacy, and then also you as a child to your father. So I see the whole, reality of how fragile life is, and
You're terrified you're going to lose what you most love.
what you most love, and it's a chain. It's not just that. It is that child, but it's the whole.
That's the pattern.
Of the whole generations, from your father to you, to your child, to your son's child, and that, if you lose your child, you lose all the future generations too. So that's like a love is your personal love, but it's also a love that's been going on for a very long time, from father to son.
All of it. But again, I think perhaps one of the most poignant, in addition to all that, that's part of the personal. To be able to say, even if you don't say it, but to realize probably the archetypal issue there. In addition to the fear of losing what you most love, that's a gift, and all of the lineage, all that part of it. The other piece I think would be a profound intervention, or at least a realization, is you're terrified you're going to lose what you most love. You're going to lose what you most love. I mean, those of us that are parents, what's the greatest fear any parent has? Come on, man. You don't even want to say the words. The greatest fear any parent has.
Yeah.
Okay? The greatest tragedy any parent can have. But the point here is, as we seek to understand the archetypal undercurrents of all experiences, whether attraction or repulsion, libidinous, carnal desire off the charts, repulsion off the charts. You're translating. That's the gift that Kaufman built. That's the thing that Jung gave us and Kaufman built his career on. And he was absolutely brilliant with it. Absolutely brilliant. To be able to catch. And, I think of it like a handle sometimes. Probably you go find better words. But a handle to capture the experience. You're terrified you will lose that which you most love. Now, you mean just a baby? No, of course the baby is a big part of it. But what else in your life are you terrified of losing that is most precious to you? Okay? You see what our work is about? It's tough. It's tough, Adrian. It's very difficult. And that's why I'm very proud to call this an expertise that you're all developing. Now, I'm continuing to develop. I practice every day. Like I was talking, I still do my Italian, sometimes 4 times a week, because I love it. Even I can lecture in Italian, I really love it. And she said a great line. How's it go? Si chiama passione perché si passa. Si chiama passione perché si passa. Capisci? Adriana and Ilse and Evie? Si chiama passione perché si passa. They call it passion because it passes. The desire, the libidinous. Oh my God, you can't get enough. Oh my God, the incredible sense of, oh my God, whatever it is. Si passa. It passes at some point. They call it passion because it passes. I mean, there's such wisdom in that. Another wonderful expression I've heard from some of my Latin American friends and colleagues, I don't know how to say the expression, you guys can help me. When something's so obvious and you want somebody to say, well, don't you really like me? And they say, do you really need to wear glasses? Well, you know that expression? You guys know that expression? Adrian, do you use that? No, it's one from one of the Latin American countries. I guess you really need to wear glasses then. When something's so obvious, So anyway, it's these pieces of wisdom. Look, ultimately, all this work is about with the wisdom traditions. We're trying to find a way to articulate and work with and do a piece of midwifery around wisdom, around sacred traditions. When you watch your child, you watch your spouse, you watch your father, your mother as they age, you watch us as we age, you can begin understanding how it is that Jung said in his autobiography, and I was always troubled by this, but as I get older, I could see more of what he meant. He said, the actual details of my life don't matter as much as the details of my inner life. Now, I do have trouble with some of that because, our family and our children and all that stuff, our career, all the stuff we do. Now, he wasn't trying to dismiss that. But I think what he was getting at in many ways was that the archetypal undercurrents that drove those relationships, which is what I'm talking about tonight with this, what Von Franz is talking about. What spirit is moving in you when you're so inflamed you can't get enough of that other person? What spirit is moving through you when you can't get far enough away from that? Or what is it when you can't stop reading? I mean, I was reading this book and every page, oh my God, I couldn't stop. And I was drooling every single page, every paragraph. What is it? What the hell is it that touches you? Your job as a pattern analyst is to work, of course, with the client. I mean, this is not just you trying to tell people, answer, that's not what it's about. We need the client to talk. There's a dialogue. However, you often are not going to arrive at the dominant through a dialogue. The dialogue may help lead you to the dominant. Like you're afraid of losing what you most love. I mean, you can talk about what's happening and all the feelings, whatever. What is it that inflames you around reading a Von Franz book? Well, it's a book. It's a story. It's an old lady talking about her life, and the people talking about her life. Now she's not talking. What the hell is it? It was the profundity of the other world. So if one was to do a distillation of this, I think if 10 of us were to do a distillation, if we read this book, I think we would say, if anybody's dreaming of this book, this Von Franz story, you would say it's the story of someone that was so deeply committed to the self. I think that's what the story would be. They lived their life in accordance. And she tells another one of these stories that captures it. She said at one point she wanted to do either an addition on her tower or do something, garage, whatever it was. And she said she didn't have much money. She wasn't into money and all that. Jung married one of the richest women in Switzerland, But Von Franz said, okay, what I did was I put all my money in a bowl for a year. And I say, if I have enough money at the end of the year in that bowl, I'll put the addition on. I don't want to do it. The end of the year, there wasn't enough money in the bowl, and they didn't do it. That's how she lived. So when going back to the thing about the guy who was scratching, and he thought he was going to die, he scratched, and she said to him, again, unfortunately, it's prophetic. It was prophetic what she. I think she was like a creative witch in that regard. I mean, it was a very powerful feminine. So I mean by witch in that sense.
What happened to him?
I'll tell you. Okay, so she said, "You're a dead man. You're a dead man now." Right? So that's what she said. And he was just so freaked out by it. She quit his training, quit his life, kill himself. He didn't know what the hell to do. And he gives some interesting interpretations and all this kind of stuff in the book. But what happened to him? Apparently, there were a lot of stories about sexual misconduct that came out. Very public stories. I believe at one point, maybe 20 years ago, I think the New York Times came out stuff. And then shortly after all that came out, he became a paraplegic.
Wow.
He's been living in a wheelchair. I think he uses one finger to write books right now. It's a tragic story. I think it was prophetic what she said. I think she picked up on his future. You're a dead man. And I think what she was speaking to was the spirit. I mean, look, not for nothing. You get involved in sexual indiscretion. It's a very, very sordid world. I'm not trying to care. What do they say? You don't throw stones and all that kind of thing. I thank God I never went down that path. I hope that I never do. Thank God. But it's a very sordid, dangerous path for everybody involved in that kind of thing. And I think she picked it up back then with the image. That if he scratched too much, he's gonna die, or give himself cancer, whatever the particular. I don't remember the exact story, but it was somehow going to result in his death. She picked it up, I think she picked up the story. She picked up the future. Now, when you realize that when you work with pattern, you are looking at past, present, and future. Because you remember, patterns are not local. Patterns are not confined by space-time parameters. You know, if you have a pattern of a puer, the pattern of the senex, the pattern of the daughter of the loving father, the daughter of the destructive father, you know, whatever it's going to be. It's not localized there. It becomes a driving force in your life. It gets enacted in many different ways in many different places. And when you meet somebody, you hear a dream, whatever, you see so much. I remember Urim gave an example years ago. He was teaching in class. He said a client came in and they had a dream where they were fishing for salmon. Now, I always perk up because I love fishing and all that, right? Fishing for salmon. And you know where they went fishing, Max? Where the salmon spawn. They were fishing for salmon where the salmon spawn, where they lay their eggs. And Urim made one of these classic, brilliant Urim-esque translation. He said, you're fishing for the mothers, to the patient. He said, this is a mother-bound patient who's going to try to seduce and go after the mothers, which was the big part of this guy's life. And the other thing is you really don't want to fish the salmon when they're spawning because they're all beat up and they're dying. Their bodies are all ripped apart from making the journey back home, and they're old at that point. It's a hell of a journey. They're often starving. Their bodies are all wrecked because they're hitting up against rocks and trees and everything they got to do to jump over things to get back. They say you don't even want to eat them really at that point. Leave them alone. But you see, it was so brilliant that the interpretation captured, and this is the point I'm trying to get at, the interpretation captured a central essence of the person's life. When von Franz said, you're already dead, she picked up on a central essence of his life. Do you realize this? And that's why I'm saying this is really not about psychology. I don't think it's psychology, this stuff. It's kind of witchcraft. Maybe something a better word. I don't know what to call it. But they were interested in the existential, spiritual life of the individual, of the essence of someone's life. That's what they were trying to do. It wasn't a technique. It wasn't a gimmick. It wasn't a clinical approach. There's nothing clinical about this, really. The old Jungian world. They were kind of witches and warlocks, where they tried to they sought to see into the soul of that individual. You're moving too far to the right. Come on. You're moving too far to the left. You're moving way too slowly. You're moving way too fast in your life. You're climbing too far. You're not climbing enough. Come on, Oh my God, at this age, you're climbing up the mountain. At this age, you're not climbing up the mountain. Why aren't you climbing up the mountain? You're still young. What the hell are you doing? You know what I'm saying? It's wisdom. It's wisdom. And you read this. I mean, again, it's me. I'm not going to say you're going to have that reaction. But I read this stuff and I'm like, my God, the connection she has to the wisdom traditions is absolutely profound. Because she's in that tradition. She's part of that tradition. To be able to pick up that he was already a dead man when he was in his 30s or 40s, whatever his age was back then. She didn't know she's picking up on a future. Another story. I remember when I went to Notre Dame conference many, many years ago, a Jungian conference. And there was a video of von Franz doing work with dreams. And one woman had a dream. She was on video watching her, right? And the woman dreamt that she spilled mercury. Not the god, but mercury in the thing, She spilled the mercury. And von Franz said, this is a very, very serious dream. She's spilling quicksilver. She's spilling an essential essence of life. Mercury, Hermes, you think of all that. And what it was she found out that the woman was a very, very gifted, off the charts gifted psychic who's putting in like 15-hour days. She said she's spilling her essence. I mean, I could shut up right there. You got the picture. Maybe I would just shut up right there. She said her essence is spilling out because she is using it in excess. You can't use that spiritual gift 15 hours a day. You can't do it. This is not a gimmick. This is not a macaroni machine where you're rolling out the macaroni in the dough. You can do 15 hours, let the machine go, let the boat engine go for 10 hours. You take a long ride, you know. The engines of the ocean liners, they go, 6,000 miles, whatever. You know, the plane you're going to take, Suzanne and Sue, coming to America to go to Italy, you know. The planes go at least 14 hours nonstop. I mean, they let the engines run. We're not made with that. And those elders, they knew it. They knew this piece of life that we don't know about or we forget about. I mean, you realize the profundity of being able to say you're spilling your essence. This is not sex. It's not semen. It's not spilling. It's not that. It's spilling your essence of the way you're living your life. Stop it, she said to her. Oh, my God. How could you not be ripped apart when you read that stuff and hear that and understand that level of work is still available to us? And you know what? I'll tell you right now. We're one of the, and I hate to talk this way. I'm sorry, but who cares right now? There are not many groups around, if hardly any, that do the work on archetypal patterning anymore. And I know better than most of you with this one because I spend time in Jungian circles, institutes, training programs. I teach in 2 different training and Jungian analytic programs. I know what goes on. And the reverence. I was presenting a paper with John Hill a while ago. He's a wonderful Jungian analyst from Zurich. And we did it for a particular Jungian group, an online seminar, right? A group of Jungian scholars and others. And we both wrote about archetypal dynamics, right? And the responses were, Susanna, it sounds like you're speaking about an archetype. What are you talking about? It sounds like you're speaking about something objective there, John. Is there anything? Come on, you really can't be saying that, can you? Come on, Jamie, you're really saying there's something universal? Oh, come on, please stop. And I told you in Italy, in many countries in Europe, Italy's one of them, that the idea of the archetype is viewed as being obsolete. It's now the social unconscious. Clearly, there's a social unconscious, but the point is, it's you know, it's entotheodromia. It's classic entotheodromia. You know that word, John, and others. Entotheodromia is things moving into their opposite. You know, the criminal who becomes a lawyer, the lawyer who becomes a criminal, kind of thing, or you know, the priest who becomes the great sinner and on. What I love is the work of being able to capture something of the essence of a story. I love it. What did the old man in the sea? What did he hook on to when he got that big fish? What was happening to him when he had a drought for 40 days? You know, it's not rhetorical. I mean, it's a lecture I've worked on for a long time. What was Hemingway? What was his unconscious telling him with that story? And I don't think I ever gave a lecture for our group here. I will someday. And I think the old man in the sea was a premonition of his own suicide. He hooked onto something that he ruined, something magnificent that he ruined. You see, the power of what's contained in a story is unimaginable. Now, you know, when you come back, when you talk to your colleagues, they're going to say, come on, it's whatever you believe, whatever you think is real, whatever you think is the story, that's the story. Fine. You know, if that's the case, go do your own brain surgery. Go do your own appendectomy. Go ahead, man. When you meet people that know something, I mean, I've had a couple of great things. Urim was off the charts. I think I told you guys, I found out after he died that he was a Kabbalist for over 30 years. It made perfect sense. John, did you ever hear him speak in New York? The Jung Institute, the Jung Foundation?
I never had the chance, Mike. I read his book.
You read his book, yeah. Well, I have one of his tapes around there. I'm going to get it produced for everybody. It's unbelievable. But you meet a giant somewhere, you know? And I'm not idealizing. Like I say, I met a lot of people. So when you see that somebody can make a comment that's accurate, and that's one of the things he said. He said, look, you know, a theory and interpretation needs to be accurate, needs to be able to convey something that's right there. How do I know it's about red? I mean, one of the women that graduated from our program, some of you know Sarah Beagleson, she's got this uncanny ability with dreams. Uncanny. Remember, so one time somebody presented a dream and she said, well, the dream is about that there was a dead fetus and there were twins in there. There was nothing in the dream saying that. She picked it up. She got it. The other day, working on a dream in a dream group, and she said, the father, it's about the daughter having a wedding. What are you talking about? It all came out to be true. I think it's more psychic than anything. How she gets this stuff. And she's like 34 years old, 35 years old. And there's no limit to these abilities, partly psychic, partly whatever. But when you realize the information is there, and the more we train ourselves, the more we learn, like Adrian, it was very, very precious what you said. You don't have the words right now. You know, it's hard to get the word. It is hard. It's very difficult to get the words. And that's what we're all doing. And honestly, I'm not being one of these, I'm all studying too. I am studying every day with this. I'm studying every day. The power of language, the power of words. And then when you don't do your work, it makes you weep. It makes you weep when you read this kind of stuff. And you realize they did dedicate their lives. Like she said to Hall one time, he was talking about something. She said, will you stop caring about those stupid things? All you care about is money and prestige. You should give it up. It's all part of you being a dead man. She said, let life take its course. Now, again, we can't do that because, we got rents and we got houses, we got mortgages, we got insurance, you got school eventually for the kids, on and on and on, all this stuff. You almost can't take that approach. We don't live in a socialized medical world. We got to get on insurance. Most of us don't, Anyway, you get the point. So what I wanted to do last week and we'll do today is I'm laying the foundation. I'm laying the foundation for the house. So by trying to give the big picture of this stuff. So when we look at a myth and a story, what story are we looking at? What is the myth? What does it mean when in the story the father thinks the baby's going to die, the newborn's going to die because the heart's beating so quickly? What's the story? Oh, there's only one story? I'm not saying there's only one story. And Yoram hit that well when he said it's not about one thing. It's about orientation. You're heading north, Aurelia. You're heading to the north. Evie, you're heading to the south. What's it mean? I don't know what it means, but I do know you're heading south, you're heading north, you're heading east, you're heading west. Each has its own orientation. I don't know what you're going to find there, but there are dominants to east and west and north and south. There are dominants to different countries. Dominance to Australia, dominance to Italy, dominance to Colombia, to Peru, to, wherever. That's our work. To Russia, there's dominance. It's okay, you're going into that world of Russia. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's clear it's a dominant you're moving into. It's something that has its own feel, its own orientation. Anybody, okay, I'm not getting political now. Anybody that dreams of America right now, whether you're American or not, you're dreaming of tremendous discord. A country that's so severely divided. I'm not talking good or bad. I'm not having that discussion. I don't want to go there. But that dream would be about an inner country that's deeply divided right now. Factions, warring factions. Where there's trouble trusting the leadership. I'm not saying good or bad again, but I think anybody would have to agree there's a lot of issue around trusting leadership in the country. Now that if somebody comes in and says, I got to talk about this country, what's going on and all this stuff, and blah, blah, blah. I got to talk about Russia, what's going on with the Russian government, with this and that, or the Australian, a lot of stuff. Australia came out of last year, with American-Russian relations. You want to ask, okay, if somebody says, I want to talk about Russia and America, I want to talk about Australia, America, Bogota, Colombia, America. Your work is to ask, what are these two countries? What are these two fields that the dreamer is involved in? Got it? What fields? What is the Colombian field and what is the American field? Now, it doesn't mean you can reduce it to one thing, but in orientation, that's where Urim's word orientation comes in. We don't know exactly what the hell Colombia means, or Russia, or America, or Australia, but it has an orientation. And then, you know, one of the ways you try to get it is you look at the myth of the country. I mean, one of our guests from Venezuela who's coming, we have two Venezuelans coming to the conference in Italy, and one of them is presenting one of the most famous Venezuelan authors, who's going to try to speak about the dominant of Venezuela in terms of how it is that they're going through what they go through today. You know, the incredible poverty and madness. Yes, Susanna.
Sorry, Michael. I was just going to also reflect, because I have had those sorts of dreams.
A little louder, please.
I have had those sorts of dreams and do reflect on it. But I also would think that anyone having those dreams, and you mentioned the US, would also be in relationship to the dominance of that archetype within the world. It's not just, you know, there's a dominant there that affects generally whatever country we're in. So I think there's that historical context too.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm sorry, go ahead. Somebody else was saying something. There's a dominant to every country. There's a dominant. And again, so if you have a story of these two countries getting along really well, or these countries are not getting along well, and there's a lot of energy wrapped up in that. Yes, of course, it's about the outer world and the politics, but on a deeper level, it's whatever these two elements are, these two countries, these two fields. There's a warring issue, or there's a coming together in a wonderful way, an alliance being built, a bridge being built between two things. You see, you get the point of how we're talking about it. You're always working to translate. You with your dad with surgery, finding a cat that was orphaned, Marie teaching at probably 4 different colleges. You know, that's a story. Deborah moving Pittsburgh to Texas. That's a story. Our work is to work with the individual to learn as much as you can about their story, what they have to say about it. And from there, you try to understand what the dominant is. Okay, what is the move from? From what to what? I move from the upper bedroom to the lower bedroom in the house. And then you may find the reason you do it is because the stairs, this is not my story, but say because the stairs, a lot of stairs, and you're getting older, you don't want to move the stairs because you fell one time or whatever. So that story in that context is saying the person is really dealing with aging. In the beginning, they're coming, the beginning, you see, they're beautiful, they're beginning their descent. They don't want to climb up and down the stairs anymore. They want to be on the one level. It doesn't mean their life is uni level, is such a word. It's only one level, that's not the point. But there's the high and the low shifts and the stairs and all that, they really cannot navigate. So there's something that, you see it? You see, there's something this person can no longer navigate. Your job then is to be able to say at some point in the process, not right away, what is it that this person cannot navigate? What can they no longer navigate? What can that car no longer do? What is this wonderful affiliation that's being built between these two countries where they're coming together in this mutual respect? What is it, the warring factions between these two elements? What the hell is it? And this is where, and I'll stop here in a minute. This is where there's no limit to this work of archetypal patterning. From government to cinema, to therapy, to social issues and global issues. So I don't know if some of you know this, but one of the first big contacts I had was probably almost 35 years ago. Those of you in Latin America, do you know a man named Roberto Palacio? Roberto Palacio, he was a former ambassador from Venezuela. That's why I made my initial connection. That's why I met Eduardo. Roberto Palacio was the ambassador from Venezuela who heard me lecture in New York, and he said, would you talk to us about war? He said, we've been at war for 300 years.
Wow.
And he said, I think that he's a brilliant guy. He's still alive. speaks like 10 languages and all this stuff. And you know, he said, I think an archetypal approach helps us understand it's not just about water rights or hunting rights that makes us go to war like that. There's something else here. And that was 30 years ago. Now look where things are, over there. I have a number of friends there. And they were telling us the other day, Latin American seminar. You know what a Jungian analyst makes in Caracas? $10 an hour as a certified Jungian analyst. Psychiatrists make maybe 20. Dozen eggs at $2, almost $3, $2.50 a dozen. I mean, but again, it's a story. What's the story? So look, the piece I hope I was able to begin introducing tonight is the tremendous profundity and depth that goes with this work. And the passion that goes. And this is a passion that doesn't pass. It waxes and wanes sometimes because of life, whatever, but you come back and you find whatever it is that keeps you going, that reminds you sometimes when we forget. Any comments or reactions? Yeah, Elsa.
I had a question when we were trying to get the archetypal of
let me mute myself, maybe because the sounds
for everybody. There's many people without muting. Okay. When we were talking about the story of you and your son, or the father and Adrian, you were trying to find out what the archetypal was. You were taking us there, and I was questioning if also the translation needs to take us to the psychological part of this story, which I was thinking if it was like when something so new and vulnerable starts to leave, how would it feel to find that such a purity in you starts to leave and it could die? Which I was even thinking of the self, but I was thinking of a dying of something very vulnerable and such power in your psyche. So I wanted to ask you if, when you said about the translation, that personal and psyche translation is important too after you see the archetypal field.
That would be a profound translation, what you just said. That would be a brilliant and a profound translation. And a gift that if you gave that to somebody, that would be a wonderful gift. Because you see, it's capturing the experience. Yes, something vulnerable, something brand new, something precious, something filled with potential and all that stuff. The fear is going to die. So you would you'd be wondering at that point, I wonder what it is in the client that they're afraid that's brand new in them, that's precious with all this potential that could die. That they may not want to, that they may not be nurturing or taking care of, or that could die off for some reason. And then you make intervention, you would then say after a while, let's say you had a one-shot consultation with them, right? Which is, if any of you have experiences of being able to have consultations, take it, jump on it. John, especially you getting into this new field and you're learning about this, take any consult you can. YMCA, church group, doesn't matter, do it. So if you're just a one-shot with somebody, what I would say is, say it. So what would you say to the client? You got one shot, no follow-through. And they're paying you for the consult, the pattern animals. What would you say? From the way you just said it, what would you say back to the client that you think this story is really about?
So I would say, I wonder what is being born in you, that it has all the potential to live a life, and it's bringing you to such fear of losing at the same time, because it's a new life, so I don't want to speak more. I want to make an essence, a poem, but I don't know where to.
Perfetto. It's excellent. Yeah, to say to somebody, I think what this is really about is something in you wonders if whatever it is that's trying to develop, is it going to make it or not?
But I also thought the power of what Ilse said was in the emotion she used when she spoke it.
Look, That's all part of it. I mean, we all are going to have our own approach. I mean, when I began this work, I led with feeling and intuition. That's all I had. And I still, you know, will sometimes lead with it. But you still want to lead with being able to articulate the dominant. However you do, whether with a lot of emotion or whatever, I think it's got to be with emotion on some level. You know, that's a great comment, Evie. Yeah, it's a big part. I mean, because this stuff does inflame you. So to be able to say to somebody, look, I would say, look, this is a huge story. There's something in you that's concerned that something precious that's just beginning could die off, that it's not going to make it. What's going on in your life? Or I hope you can get yourself in therapy to find out what the hell it is in your life right now that is so precious that could die off. It could happen. But the dreamer, or the patient here, the person with the consult, needs to come to grips with whatever it is that is so precious, could die if they don't really take care of it. Yeah. Any other comments? Questions? Jamie, you got something?
I'm just really mindful tonight about the idea of taking care of ourselves doing this work, because I think you open yourself up to so many levels. And I think that's just really important.
Huge piece. Well, John, this is what you're getting into. Welcome aboard, man.
Thank you. It gives a lot to think about. Very deep, many levels. Very, very interesting.
There's a lot of levels to this, yeah. And I think some of the work you do as an attorney, by looking at what's objective, what's circumstantial, what is conjecture, is really important. It's going to help with this. Is that conjecture? Is that the story? Okay. Okay, everybody. Yeah, Elsa.
Another quick question. When we were talking about the orientation of a country, you know, or the dominant of a country, I had a question. If you go to the past of the country and the present of the country and the future of the country, as you said, because I don't know, sometimes if you go to a country, if you go to what's happening right now, or you go to the dominance of the past of how that country was developed, or all of the above. Probably that's the answer, but I had that question, where to go.
For instance, with Colombia, Inez did a wonderful piece of work on Patasola, the myth of Patasola. And in many ways, that story captures a lot of the history of Colombia. They say part of the story is about when the Spaniards came in and took over the people. They slaughtered some of the people. So, and Eduardo has done a lot of wonderful work on the gold, on the statues. What's the word? Statuary? Is that the word you use? Statuary? I can't think of whatever the word is. But how the statues and the images capture the history of the people, the archetypal base of it.
So when we go to myths, that would be the past, let's say, or that would be that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, guys. Well, look, we're gonna stop for tonight. I'm going to bed.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, can you tell me the name of that book that you were holding up again?
It's the title. All it is, Marie-Louise von Franz, and it's edited by James Hall and Daryl Sharp. It's a great book. It's like 100-some pages, and they're all 120 pages, or whatever. It's one hand, it's a quick read until you realize, oh my God, I better read like 10 times. So again, Marie-Louise von Franz. It's a subtitle, but you don't need that right now. Edited by James Hall and Daryl Sharp. And it's published by Inner City Books. In what year was it? 19. I thought it was brand new, but it's not. 2008.
Great.
Okay, everybody. Great work.
Thank
I'll
you,
see you
Mike.
Good night, everybody.
before. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye. Get some sleep, Anastasia.
You too, Michael. Rest.
I'm ready.